episode may contain language or discussions that may be offensive or triggering. Refer to the episode summary for details. Welcome to On Her Terms. I am your host, Charlene Ketchum, and I have two talented ladies with me today. I have first De-Andrea Blaylock-Johnson. She's a clinical social worker, therapist, sex therapist, and owner of Sankofa Sex Therapy. And I also have Miss Ashley Logan. She's a business operations manager for an assisted living community, and she recently started her own event planning business with parties, dinners, and weddings. And you can find all of the contact information and social media handles for both of these ladies by visiting she.confidential.com. So today we will share some nuggets to help women improve their body image and awareness so that they can enhance their sexual satisfaction. So one of the things that made me want to cover this topic on the show was just remembering when I was a kid and we used to go back to school shopping. So I don't know how people do it now, but when I was a kid, it was this big exercise. And my mom used to bring both of my aunts with us because they were younger and they were a little more trendy than my mama was. So we would go to Venture and we would go to Fashion Bug because they had nice clothes and they had layaway. And so we would go in like June or July and I'll get to try on all these clothes and we put them up in the layaway and I get them out. We'd be able to get them out a couple of weeks before school started. So I have a lot of fond memories about that. But then I had a lot of anxiety wrapped up in it because I've always had a butt. I had a butt when I was 10 and that evoked like the boys used to, y'all remember that LL Cool J song, like where the girls got a big old butt. They used to say that stuff when I was in grade school. And I can laugh at it now, but I didn't laugh about it then. And when we would go back to school shopping, my mom would always have me try on the clothes and turn around and she'd be like, oh, her butt is still showing in that. And so we would try to find something else that would cover me up better. And it stayed that way when I was older and she wasn't coming with me to go back to school shopping. It continued to be that way, kind of checking to see, is this showing your breast? Is this showing your butt? That's a little too fitted. And I was always super self-conscious. Like, I can't make this go away. Even with loose clothes, it won't go away. And so I had a lot of anxiety about trying to hide my body. And that certainly spilled over into a sexuality context because it gave me this shame about my own body. And that's without even talking about sexual behavior, just with my own body image. And so I've talked to other women about that. And a lot of us had similar experiences growing up. And I don't know, how was it for you ladies when you were young? Did y'all do back to school shopping drama or have those situations where you were trying to mask what the good Lord gave you?
Yeah, I definitely remember shopping with my mom, and it wasn't a Fashion Bug. It was 16 plus or one of those stores. And I remember a man making a comment about my body and my mother being very like protective of me in that moment. Like, oh, she doesn't look 12 or however old I was. And I was working out with my friend who's a personal trainer this morning and talking about how sometimes we end up putting on layers to detract from that unwanted attention, whether it's layers of clothing or like putting on weight subconsciously, like putting on weight so that you don't have that unwanted attention. And I definitely resonate with that, just not wanting that attention when I was younger, not wanting people, whether they were my age or older, to say things about my body. Growing up in my home, my mother was very affirmative and taught us to love our bodies and be at home in our bodies. However, when I left home, it was a different story. So yeah, that definitely resonated with me.
Well, for me, so I've always been one. I wasn't as blessed as everyone else, when I became of age. Shopping was always fun because my mom was a fashionista like myself. So trying to make sure that it fit in the appropriate places and different things, I really didn't kind of run into those issues. But what's crazy is my first job was at Rave. Um, and I was exposed to, other styles of clothing. And which at the time my mother, she thought was, of course, very risque. And looking back, yeah, the crop tops and different things. So she would like hide things so that I wouldn't wear them, and different things like that. But it wasn't until I became a mom, I didn't really understand the whole fat shame or just my girls were very blessed, and not anything of their own. However, we were having, when it was time for school shopping, we had that issue. And I found myself, saying, oh, I need to make sure you cover up and, different things like that. But it was never a place from them of being kind of like, I didn't want them to feel like they had to live in a box because of what God gave them. This wasn't anything purchased. This is the body that God made for them. And I wanted them to be comfortable in that. Because I believe that beauty starts on the inside, and I always wanted them to feel like regardless of what you put on or how you wear it, it's all about how you carry yourself as a young lady. So my youngest daughter more so, but we went through a lot with that because of course the clothes aren't as they don't make them for, blessed young ladies. However, and I've had some situations even in their school where they have rules that they have to wear certain shorts that can't be a certain, well, we live in Arizona and all the girls pretty much wear the same thing, and my argument was, you're comparing her to someone they're completely different, and for her, it may seem risque, but it's okay for her. But these are two little girls. That's what we see. And I feel like for me, it's what you make it, so we struggled with that a long time, and even my oldest daughter, she kind of had some insecurities with that. She's just like, I don't, she got to a point she didn't want me to see her, and I've had conversations on Facebook, with different and I think me and Charlene have even kind of went back and forth with her explaining to me, don't allow people to fat shame, and I didn't know that was a thing because I've never been that size. I've never, I've always kind of been a small frame, but I know for, when I became a mom that this was the real thing. And I've just been trying to encourage them and teach them, love and teach them, a little modesty, whatnot. But however, you have to love the skin you're in, and although it may not, God made us this way. He made us this way. And so everybody is going to be different, but it definitely starts, within.
So both of you just said some things that I just got to dig into. So, and I'll highlight them now just in case I forget them later and we can come back to them. So y'all got to remember too. The first is both of you mentioned, Ashley, you mentioned it from the perspective of being a mom, how you've instilled in your daughters to love yourself. And De-Andrea, you mentioned that your mom taught you all to love yourselves, but that was something that was protected kind of at home until you went out into the world. So I first want to talk about how you actually do that. For moms who are in the audience, how do you instill that confidence in your child while you're protecting them? So how do you balance that? And then second, talking about the differences when you talk about school dress codes and everything and how they can be, the application of them can hurt Black girls or girls who are curvier because even, there's fat shaming and then there's just body shaming because I didn't get overweight until like 5 years ago. Prior to that, I was proportioned, but it was still, it's like, okay, you got all this butt, you got breasts and everything. And so, yeah, a certain outfit, definitely I look at pictures back when I was a teenager and I look very different from teenagers do now because, we didn't get to wear the makeup and the clothes they do now, but still I had grown men hollering at me, but it wasn't because of how I was dressed. It really was just because they were nasty. And so that's, is what it is. And so, what we'll start with, how do we deal with, as parents, this disproportionate application, when we start body comparing, when schools have these policies and you say you can't wear this type of dress, but yeah, if you put this on a thin framed girl, it's not a problem. But if you put this on a girl who is a little more shapely, and a lot of times that tends to be, Black and Latino women, women of color who are a little bit more curvier, then it's a problem. So how do we advocate for our kids in those situations?
It's hard. It's hard. And I think, it's crazy as it sounds, and it's very hard. However, social media and and they have helped with that, because now it's okay to have a small waist and a big butt. Now it's okay to, have the more curvier. Now we're getting fashion lines that are contributing to the tall girl or the curvy. So at first, before, things were, kind of straight and narrow, I will have to, contribute to social media has helped a lot. They helped a lot with just trying to accommodate, be more accommodating with some of the clothes that they have, some of the clothes that they offer. I definitely have had a lot of conversations with principals and teachers and different things of that nature, and just trying to get them to understand. And that's one of the things where I think, as they're starting to see it more and more, and especially living in such a diverse place as Arizona, it's more common than none. You don't just have, we are the minority, and so but they're able to see that there are more girls like this. But then also, I think, with different brands, different clothing, I also feel like you have to dress your body, so now you have labels like Fashion Nova and different things that are being more open and creating more options for this type of situation. And that helps a lot. That truly helps a lot, because I know a lot of girls, it was, you don't make enough for tall women, or you don't make enough for curvy women. I remember shopping for bras for my girls. They always had, and I had to go to Fredericks of Hollywood for my 12-year-old, because they didn't have a lot of options. Well, now I have Fenty Beauty. Now Walmart has a line. So I think as time is going on, they're pretty much creating this space for that type of girl. And that's truly helping. It doesn't make school shopping so stressful. It doesn't. My oldest hated bra shopping, because she knew we had to go to a few places just to get the right fit. But now a lot of the retail stores and a lot of, they are accommodating with the now. So I can really, as a mom, that helps, because going to Target or Walmart, I can't do that for them because of that. But now that I have more options, and I think that was the biggest thing. We only had Venture. We only had Walmart. We only, we didn't have a Fashion Nova or a Boohoo, or we didn't have these. So I think that helps a lot.
One thing that kind of jumped out at me is the idea of the adultification of Black children, specifically of Black girls, and how our children are not allowed to just be children. They're looked at as being older than what they are. And we see the effects of this, not just in how people are predatory in this way, but also with punishment in schools. Just the idea of stripping away the innocence of a child. And so I'm going to put this idea of who I think you are onto you, and hold you to a specific standard when you're still a child. I'm also thinking about the book called Fearing the Black Body, and it talks about the roots of fat phobia and how it's actually rooted in racism. And all of these different things are just kind of jumping out. Uh, it's just very interesting when you start to dissect these layers and see where it comes from. And I think when you are able to kind of sift through those things and understand the negative messages that you get outside, you can then try to control the environment that you have in your home, still preparing your children for what they may encounter. And so the way that my mother did this was that she was very purposeful in one, not equating nakedness to anything sexual. And so I grew up in a household full of women. So we walked around naked. Okay. Our bodies are different, but it was something that I got to be very comfortable with my body. Although I did not see any bodies that looked like mine in movies or TV,
Mhm.
but I grew an appreciation for my body in my home, so that when I did decide to share my body, like, of course, you may have your own insecurities, but
Yes.
there was still a certain groundedness that I had, an appreciation for who I am and what I look like, that my mother instilled in me, that even though, yes, I get all these negative images and negative ideas when I left her house, but I could still like go back to that, those things that the seeds that she planted. So.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's really amazing when you talk about just that openness in the house about the body, because that's completely different from how we grew up. It's like you cover up. It was, and it, I don't think it was an intentional thing. And so, audience people hearing this, my mother listening to this, is not that I felt that my mom intentionally tried to shame us or anything. I think a lot of it's how just how she was taught,
Mhm.
because my grandmother certainly isn't open. She doesn't even talk about menopause or, any of that. That's very just, you don't talk about those things. And so I think that her children, that's the way they learned to repress and not communicate those things. So I didn't grow up, being open about my body. I was always taught like you need to hide it, you need to hide it. And so that would be it even shocked me when I was in the dorms in college, because I lived on an all girls floor. And so some people were a little bit more relaxed and how they would parade around. And I was like, oh my God, how was she raised and everything? But that's definitely a new. I'm familiar with hearing that, but that's, I think about how different my view of my body might be if I had been in an environment where it was just like, okay, that's your body and we all look different.
Mhm.
Because I don't know, when you're with your clients, do people come to you with concerns related to this, with body image things, because of how they were taught to that, shame associated with their bodies?
Absolutely. So I work with individuals and those in all types of relationships. And so some of the uh, concerns that people may come to me with are definitely related to how they see themselves as an individual, how they see themselves as a partner. And it does sometimes go back to being at home in their bodies, however that may look. It could be someone who is gender nonconforming and they are exploring different ways of really being at home in their body. What does that look like? What does that feel like? It could be a cisgender woman who grew up with the idea that something is wrong with my body because I have a big butt or something like that. And so when they are then looking to be sexual with their partners and their partner wants to touch a specific part of their body, they may shy away from it. So yeah, body image definitely comes up with my clients, but in a lot of different ways.
Actually, I think you were about to chime in earlier.
Well, no, I was when she was talking about the full of women. Honestly, I have to say, I think pretty much all my friends have probably seen me naked. And it's not because, that's just me. It don't take nothing from I'm not going, I'm gonna just take my stuff off. Like that's that, and my house is they laugh, but my house is a free spirit. If you can't be yourself at home, where can you be yourself? So it's nothing, they laugh and they'll say, so and so is coming over. Okay, well, good. Let me know, because it's no telling how I'm gonna be, because once I work all day, I'm ready to come home and it's stressed, and it's nothing, everything is coming off. So, I think for me, I've always been kind of comfortable, with my body, but not even seeing it as, I think as De-Andrea mentioned, as a sex thing. And it's never been you need to, now, of course, as I've gotten married, with my husband, I explained to them, that portion, but even now, and they definitely laugh all the Mom, you just really don't. It's not that I like being in my natural form. I like being, that's just me, how I feel comfortable. Less is I wear clothes all week. So if I come home and I want to be me, I want to be the raw me. And I stress that even to my son, he's growing up now and I have to explain to son, but my house is definitely a safe place. It's a free spirit, because again, I know you talked about with your mom, as far as like my mom and I, we didn't talk about sex. It was no sex. Sex is bad.
Yes, that's what I was told. Don't get pregnant. Don't get pregnant.
That was it. Yeah, that was it.
So,
that's it. Yeah, I'm like, okay, well, what are the other rules? Like, what are the other, stipulations? You don't let boys see this, and you don't let. Well, why not? Nobody ever told me, well, you that's for your husband. But again, this is. I learned all that on my own, and I made sure as a mother, I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna do things a little different, but I definitely want them to feel like it's comfortable being who and in what they are. Because I think my whole life I've always felt like this. I'm always, my best friend tells me all the time, I'll call her, hey, what's going on? Can you look at this? And she's like, really? I'm at work. I'm like, I really need you to look.
Well, see, but you know what? You make a good point. Like, what's normal on your body? Most women, and I remember, I'll never forget this. And I don't know if my mama remembers this, but maybe she will when she hears this. But I remember I got a whooping once because my stepdad had Playboy magazines, and he used to hide them. And I was looking at them, and I was like maybe 8 or 9 or something. And I wrote about it in my diary. I wrote everything down. And I was a good kid. I used to talk a lot, but I was a pretty obedient child. And so I wrote whenever I got a whooping. And I got a whooping because they found out I had looked at his magazines. And it wasn't a sexual thing at all. It was just, I saw him and I was like, oh, okay. And I was curious because I'm like, okay, I ain't got hurt. I ain't got all this. What's up with that? And I had never seen a naked woman before. And so it was a curiosity because my mama was always covered up. I'm sure I saw her when I was, a toddler, but I didn't remember that. So that moment, and then associating that with like, I got a whooping for looking at this, and again, I get it, because I think that because that was associated with sexuality, because that's what men bought it for. It's like you punish your child because this is a bad thing. But again, we're kind of conditioning them that the human body is a bad thing, and to be curious about it is a bad thing. When, like you just said, Ashley, you called your friend, you're like, look at this, because we don't know, like, what's normal breasts look like. Like I've looked in medical books. I'm like, is this normal for me to have like this pain this time of the month and this and that? It's like I was on birth control.
And I love the woman's body. I am absolutely, and and I tell people, don't take this the wrong way, but the woman's physique is so sexy to me. I said, I'm confident enough in myself to look at another woman's body and say, dang,
she's beautiful.
That's definitely, but and so sometimes that's seen as a negative, but I'm like, I'm okay with that, because all of the beautiful shapes, all of the, for me, that is so beautiful. And I'm okay with that, because I know that we're all different. I know that we're made different. And it's like, how can you experience that if you don't see it? So it's just like, and that's a help, that's a tool, that sometimes, it's like, look, we're all different. And I hate to say it. I tell my girls, I say, look, people pay for what you have.
Yes.
They pay.
Yes.
They pay for it. I said, so you're naturally
For the butt.
designed and perfect in his image. Understand that and embrace it. And that's that's it, because again, I embrace all of this, but I don't care what, even when I lost some weight. So even when I was a little fluffier, I embraced it. Oh, I told my husband, you have to love this by the pound. I don't care what pound, but you got to love all of this by the pound. And that's gonna be that. And we've been okay. So it's just like you definitely, I think it definitely, and it's crazy because I didn't even really get kind of into the whole sexuality, even within myself or my mate, until I became an adult woman. I didn't even know my body until I became an adult woman.
Well, that is, I read an article not too long ago. I get on all these tangents. I see different things. I'm like, oh, let me read this. And it was like midnight. I was in the bed. This is why it's bad that we got these smartphones, because it's next to me. And sometimes I'll look up one thing and then I go down the rabbit hole. And it said that like only less than half of heterosexual women have satisfied sex lives. And the percentages of women who orgasm through vaginal sex were like a third of the women. But they said, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm reading all this. So then I start Googling like women's sexual satisfaction and all these different things that are related to it. And they said some of the causes, one of the main causes is body image. One of the things, body image, is in women not knowing their body, because women aren't encouraged, to do self-play, to masturbate. And so they never learn what pleasures them. So if you don't know what triggers you, you can't teach your partner, because you do have to teach them, because they don't know. Most men been trained by porn.
Well, so I can't say that, sure, because I've never masturbated. And it wasn't until I met my now husband, I had never had an orgasm.
And some men may know. It's, when I'm speaking in some may know, but in general,
he helped me to discover who, because I was just like having sex, like I just thought this was, I never knew what was supposed to, I just knew you were supposed to have sex. That was it. I didn't know what was, that was it. Nobody ever taught me what you have, this is what's supposed, nobody. And it wasn't until I was, and I'm like, well, what have I been doing all this time? And he's like, I have no idea. But it wasn't until, because I had never mastered, I didn't, and so, and I'm like, and I thought that something, I would look back, I'm looking back, and for a while, I thought, I'm like, is something wrong? Like, a lot of these women talk about these experiences that they have, these mind-blowing experiences, and nice long nights, and I'm like, I can't relate.
You know what I've learned, and De-Andrea, you can probably shed a lot of light on this for us, but what I've also learned a lot of times, and I'm telling you, when I used to have those parties, some stuff used to come out, and even just talking to women one-on-one, for a lot of women, even without the orgasm, it's the experience, the closeness itself is really special. And I have joked to people and said sometimes, sometimes everything before and after the actual sex is the best part, because sex is messy. And so it's like, if you don't have some satisfaction, if you don't get to orgasm, it's like, I'm like, oh, it's a waste of time, unless you really have that emotional connection with that person. And so that intimacy, I think, is what does it for a lot of women. And so even if they're not, and then also the other thing is, orgasm isn't the only, it shouldn't be the goal of sexual connection. But even if it's not something that they want to do, it's not pleasurable because they don't want to do it in the first place, because they're tired. They're thinking, I know women who are married and have kids, and they say, he'd have sex every day if we could, but I'm laying there, I'm like, okay, how much longer? Because I gotta do this laundry, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And so women are a little bit more complicated from what I've read and from what I've talked about with other women, in terms of understanding our bodies and what's pleasurable, and then also getting rid of those mental blocks whereas it's a little bit different for men. But I'll let De-Andrea, you're the expert, so I'll let you educate us on this.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about a few different things. One specifically that, and I'm so glad you said it, that the goal of sex should not be orgasm. A lot of times when people set that as their goal, it becomes very elusive. It's like a moving target that you can't quite grasp. And so I'm really glad that you said that. But also, that's not an excuse to have bad sex with selfish partners. Just because the goal isn't always orgasm, that doesn't mean that you settle for lackluster sexual experiences.
Mhm.
I think it's so important for people to understand, specifically people with vulvas, that most people with vulvas need some type of clitoral stimulation in order to have an orgasm. And so if they are looking to have orgasms through penetrative sex, that may not happen for you. Although the clitoris is a very intricate part of our bodies, a lot of folks with vulvas need that direct clitoral stimulation, not indirect, that may occur during intercourse. And so these are things that we're not necessarily taught. And so you have stories like what Ashley was talking about. She's out here having sex, and it's like, well, why ain't it great like all these other people? Because you may have been with partners who didn't, they didn't know, because their sex education may have come from porn, which was not necessarily focused on the pleasure of the vulva owner. It's just focused on what it looks like. And I'm not anti-porn, but it's not real life.
Right.
Entertainment.
Yeah, I'm not anti-porn at all. It's just you have to understand what it is, what it's there for.
Yeah, just look at it within that context.
And just take it for what it is, and don't try none of that at home, because they are paid individuals. That is their job.
and it's edited. They are not doing all that in one run through. There's a lot of icing and extra lubrication being injected in there.
Yeah, they're not showing you the water breaks.
No.
For different sexual acts.
Mm-hmm.
The like you said, the lube, they're not showing that. And so when that is your only perspective, your only idea of how sex is supposed to happen, and it doesn't happen that way, you're setting yourself and your sexual partners up for disappointment. And so that's why it's so important to understand your body, understand what feels good to you, to also feel at home enough in your body to learn those things, whether it's through solo sex or partnered sex, but just to be able to be present and in the moment. And like I said, in your body, that can definitely help you to have better sexual experiences.
And I also, to add to that too, I also think too, sometimes I think even for me, sometimes I felt embarrassed. Like I felt, although I was comfortable with my body and comfortable with, I'm thinking but to hear to talk about this amongst other women, I was embarrassed. I didn't know how to talk to other women about what I was dealing with, because again, you have all these people. I think a lot of women are not comfortable with being honest with, because again, for a man, that's instantly like a dragged out, because he's seen as not being a man no more. Mm-hmm. And he, but instead of just trying to say, I really want to learn this. I really want, because it is something that has to be taught. We get such a vague understanding of what sex is, even coming up, because of course, we have our generational parents or whatnot. So coming from that, being born in the 80s, and just think it's like, that wasn't a conversation that we had. So as we're getting older and just trying to understand more, and even our significant others, it's just like, that's one of those hard conversations. And I think that as women, we need to be more comfortable with I don't want to say calling it out, but asking questions, or seeking help. I mean, now the mere fact that we have therapists that are trained in this area, because of course we didn't have that, back then. But I think that that's the biggest thing, because as African American women, I definitely know that, therapy is shined upon. And, if you're going to therapy, something must be wrong. And not necessarily, sometimes you just need a good teacher, and I think that once we get comfortable with saying, hey, I need to learn more, and it's okay to say that, I think that would help us a lot more. Especially, I can even say for me, because it was definitely, I felt embarrassing to even discuss, so.
One big part of what I do is providing a safe space for people to ask those questions. The model for sex therapy is called Plicit. It's giving permission to ask those questions, and then limited information, specific suggestions, and then intensive therapy. And that's kind of the model for sexuality education for the PLISS. PLI, and then the SS, the specific suggestions would be sexuality counseling, and then the intensive therapy would be sexuality therapists. And so, but like I said, opening the door, providing that safe space, because people don't often have those networks where they can ask the questions. I'm very fortunate that I have friends where we talk about sex rather openly. We talk about sex toys. We talk about, different things like that, and achieving pleasure and whatnot. And, but I also have other friends who I know don't have the same circles or the same safe spaces. Right. And so it's important that we provide those for each other. But also, if you're not able to have that within your own personal network, that you are able to seek out professionals who can provide that for you.
So how would people go to if someone's listening to this and they're interested and they're thinking, I need help, in this area, what's their first step? Do they go to a traditional therapist, or do they need to seek out someone who is a sex therapist, or what is it that they need to search for in terms of who can help them professionally?
Yeah, so if they're dealing with specific sexuality issues, I would suggest that they seek out someone who is a trained sexuality therapist. There are some therapists who may say that, sure, I'll talk about sex, and then they don't really have a lot of training in it. And then I've also come across a lot of therapists who say, oh, I don't talk about sex. It's like, how, Sway? Like, sexuality is
right.
it's an integral part of our lives. And so, like, even if that's not your specialty, you gotta at least be able to talk about it and then refer out or something. But yeah, I would definitely suggest people looking for someone who is specifically trained as a sexuality therapist if their issue is specifically sexual.
Are there any resources or networks that list Black sex therapists specifically?
Yes, there are a few. And so for nationally, there is an organization. Now, this one isn't just for Black sex therapists, but just in general, the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. And they have a search engine on their website where you can find a therapist in your state. And those are specifically certified sexuality therapists that are listed on their website. I'm also a member of an organization called the Women of Color Sexual Health Network. And we also have a member listing of women of color specifically who are in the field of sexuality. And they could be educators, counselors, therapists, sex workers, sex coaches, any variety of those things. And then there is another organization. I'm going to look up their name real quick because it's escaping me. But there is another organization that has a listing of sexuality therapists that are Black people of color.
Okay.
Let me find that real quick.
Okay.
I got a question for you, De-Andrea, because I've been talking about my girls, and I have a son, and I know somebody's listening. So I don't have a lot of experience with this, with, and I know we talked about the whole masturbation thing. And so I feel like it's coming. He's 11, the longer showers, different. And again, that was a thing. That was like, no, you don't, but I don't want to take that part away from it. And I don't, I know that I can't say that that's a thing that boys, because I'm not a boy. So but as a mom, as a boy mom, knowing, he's going to try to figure it out some kind of way. What advice could you give as far as handling that? Or, is that a conversation that needs to be had? Or is this one of the things where he just needs to kind of explore himself and just, so what kind of feedback can you give for a boy mom?
Yeah, well, and I'm gonna say not just a boy mom, but any gender, because sexuality exploration throughout the lifespan is normal, and it should be embraced, talked about. So, for example, I think about a friend who has young daughters, and she talks with them. I remember a conversation that she shared where she talked about her oldest child was, pleasuring herself on her vulva. And she said, I know that feels good, but this is not something that we do in public. This is something that we do in private. And it's not something that you share with others. Nothing is wrong with it. And so, and little bit is young, but
Yes.
just normalizing it and saying, okay, this is okay, but we don't do this in the living room.
Right.
We go to the bedroom and we do, and this is something that we do. And so like when you're having these conversations, or as your children continue to grow, just letting them know, I know that feels good. Touching yourself in these areas is pleasurable, perfectly okay. However, there are certain things that we do by ourselves, that we keep to ourselves, that we don't share with others. So if you want to touch yourself, do that in your room, but not in the living room while we're watching Blue's Clues or whatever we watching, so but just like normalizing it without shame. And I think that's like the biggest thing. There is an organization, Sex Positive Families, that does a lot of great work around educating parents and caretakers on how to have these really tough conversations, because we're not taught how to do this.
Because that's tough, and I don't even know if I'm ready, because that just really hurt my feelings, and I know it's normal, but it hurts, and
it's something. But Sex Positive Families got some tools for you, and you can check them out. Melissa Pintor is the creator of that organization, and they do an amazing job. But I did find the name of the other organization. It's the Association of Black Sexologists and Clinicians, and they have a listing of qualified sexuality educators, counselors, and therapists as well that are specifically Black.
Excellent. And for the audience, all of those links will be in the link for the show. So you'll be able to access all of those links. So thank you definitely for those. I was thinking, as you were describing, as Ashley was asking the question about how do you initiate these conversations with boys or just kids in general, and I was thinking about what's the role in social media in educating things and all of these things with our kids and just with women, adults in general, about sexuality and body image and acceptance. Because earlier, Ashley, you noted that social media has made it a little bit easier in terms of just accepting different types of bodies. And I think it has, but then it hasn't. That's a little murky for me. But
it has, but it hasn't, because sometimes it makes me feel a little insecure,
Did you see Serena Williams this week? Did y'all see Serena Williams? Do y'all follow her?
I
Go
do.
on Serena Williamson's
I do.
girl, yesterday she posted these photos. Like, her body is the truth. Like, and it's real, and it's not knocking people. If you can afford it and you want to go buy it, more power to you. But her body is the truth. And I loved it. And I don't really comment on a lot of celebrity posts because I know they don't read that stuff and they got millions of people commenting. But I was just like, I did the little fire emoji. I'm like so proud of myself because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm hip. But I just had to give her props. And I loved that all these women were just giving her like mad props. Like, you're gorgeous, because we've heard all these little side comments about her because she has a different look from what's deemed attractive by European standards. And so I'm really excited to see that people are recognizing and lifting her up, because young girls, young Black girls need to see her and know that I can look like Serena Williams, and that's beautiful too. And so it's just seeing that on social media was really positive. But then on the other hand, you see other people, and I mentioned celebrities because they have such an impact on the young people. You see other celebrities that will swear up and down that everything is natural, but it's surgically enhanced. Or they're using, like, I saw something where you can use an app that will straight up change your body. Like, it gives you curves. I was like, so I could use that shit and lose 20 pounds? Like, oh my God. Like, it's crazy. If you Google it, I'm sure you can find it. Like, there's a video that shows the before picture and then the after. And this chick had a butt and like a waist like Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind. Like, it was crazy. And so I look at this stuff on social media, I'm like, is this helping our kids? Because are boys looking at this and thinking this is how girls are supposed to look, and are girls looking at this thinking this is what I'm supposed to look like? And how does that tie in to our body image and acceptance? Is this going to set us up for more clients running to De-Andrea?
I think it's so important to have a balanced perspective. Thinking about, as a parent, I think that it's important that you know what your children are viewing and seeing, and then you give that balanced perspective. I think about how growing up, we'd be watching Oprah, and let's say Oprah's talking about teenage pregnancy or had an episode about AIDS. Well, when the TV show went off, my mom turned it off, and then we had a conversation. And I think that you can still kind of apply that same thing, where if you see your child looking at specific bodies, or, thinking I got to look this way, or I can't post a picture unless it has this specific filter on it, just explaining that not everything you see on social media is real life. Mm-hmm. Not everything is supposed to be attainable. Not everybody on here is doing squats and wearing waist trainers. They went to Dr. Curves, and that's okay.
Yes, it
but
is.
Don't feel that you have to live up to this specific unattainable ideal. I think about how I don't follow specific things that don't make me feel good. Like, if it makes me feel like I'm lacking or something like that, I'm not following it. Because for me, my personal social media page is just something to pass time and to connect with friends, not something that needs to cause me stress. And so again, I'm an adult, almost 40, right? But as a parent, thinking about how you want to specifically balance the images that your children may see with these conversations, and then also having those other conversations of what real bodies look like. Like, yeah, your body may not be perky like this, but it's still a beautiful, good body because it's yours.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I agree with that. I think what De-Andrea said about making sure that you separate the reality. A lot of times they do. Even for my girls, I have to explain it to them a lot. This is not real. In an aspect of, these are paid entertainers. People pay them. Instagram pays them to dress like this or to use, so I think that's the biggest thing, is just trying to get them to understand, because of course what they see is what they see, and it's like, okay, well, no, and even for myself, even for myself, I'm like, oh my goodness, I must be doing something wrong. How is she the same age as me? And so it's just like, and I agree with you, De-Andrea. Sometimes you have to detach from things that don't make you feel good. And I constantly just keep looking in hopes that somebody will mysteriously put 10 grand in my account so I can go and together. But the reality of it all, the reality is, no, ma'am, so I'm going to just work damn hard and keep doing what I'm doing, or whatnot. But I definitely think that's the key, is just trying to teach them that, reality versus what it is. And this is, I think from the clothing aspect and kind of seeing things, that has opened up different areas for different, aspects in that area. But as far as the imagery, I definitely feel like we got some ways to go with that, especially with our young Black girls, as far as not, because even with, I think, the natural hair, that's a big thing. My oldest daughter, that was she didn't want to wear her natural hair. She's like, well, I want my hair long and straight. And I said, well, unfortunately, this is not the case. However, you are beautiful. He made you this way because he wanted, and which is why I embrace my natural hair, because it's like, long and straight is fine. That's fine. But so is short and kinky. So it's just like trying to get that balance in, because they see, oh, well, how come I think one time my son asked me to take him to the barber shop because he wanted his hair to do this, and I said, I'm sorry, son, that's not, we can't do that, so we can do some other things, but and that's fine, but you have to be comfortable with where you're at. And thinking about girls, as I was going over kind of, with our boys experience it too, it's just trying to make sure that they fit into this box. And I tell my girls, my nieces, stop trying to fit into a box. Stop. Everybody is different. In order for people to accept who you are, you have to be confident in that.
Yeah.
And that's why people tell me all the time, Ashley, because I'm confident with who I am. I can stand in a room with so many different people, but I have become confident with this. I have become so confident in corporate America with this short blonde hair and this neck. And I will stand in a boardroom and I will deliver, because
I know that's
that's me. And I want to create that legacy, and I want our young Black girls to feel the same way and understand that there is no type, there is no way, there is no, you are who you are, and you got to embrace that regardless of what anybody says or what anybody does. You have to embrace you, and that's okay, and that is okay.
And I love that about you, Ashley, because you have always been real. And what I've loved about your recent transformation, you shared your health journey with us on social media and everything. And one of the things that I loved about the way you presented it was about wellness. It wasn't like you talked about, like, I'm wearing this and that, but it wasn't about the aesthetics a lot with you. You talked about how you felt. You talked about your health. You talked about, I want to live, so I'm doing XYZ. And I thought that was so inspiring and really motivating for me to be consistent and say, I need to take my butt to sleep. Because for me, it's not so much the food. Like, I have issues with sweets, but a lot of it is just lifestyle related things. Like, I need to, get more rest. I need to delegate. Like, I use a meal prep service, Executive Cuisine, to you, based in St. Louis, and it's Black owned. It's amazing, so good. So people in St. Louis should check it out. But that's delegating that helps me not have to deal with meal prepping, and I can eat, nutritious food and not be having to run out and grab something because I'm so busy. I don't have time to do meal prep or something. And so what I really loved about your journey is that it really came from a place of self-love. Like, you showed that. And so and one of the things that I'm learning and just keep getting affirmation every day about this thing when we talk about confidence, sexual empowerment, and just confidence in general. It's a reflection of self-love. And when you love yourself a lot, like, and that's the thing, like you love yourself a lot. And you love yourself. I mean, De-Andrea, I'm telling you, this girl, she ain't gonna let you mess with her. Cause
my friend says you got a lot of mirrors
going on. Like, I've known this girl for almost 20 years now, and it's been consistent. You know,
because RuPaul said something on his show. If you can't love yourself, how in the hell you gonna love somebody else? Can I get an amen? Yeah. My friend came and said, you got so many mirrors around here. I said, because I love me. I said, but creating that journey to better health has done wonders with me spiritually, mentally, sexually. Like, it's out of the park. I was like, well, where is all this energy coming from? Because a year ago, I was like, look, I was one of those people, I got to do laundry. I'm tired. But doing that has opened up the door for so many things because it was about, I love you. So this is how you're going to treat you, you know, and it started with that. And it's just like, you know, there's no reason for this. There's no reason for this. But with doing this, again, it has opened up so many issues that I was having just within myself, health-wise, mentally, stress. I let all that go. I let all that go because I needed to love me a lot more than what I said, so if you loved one of your kids the way you loved yourself, you wouldn't be this way. And I had to make a change, and I had to show them that, you know, this could happen. It starts, you know, with this, and you'll see all the changes that just naturally, you know, came about. And it's just like, I love me. I love me more than anybody I know. And I'm determined. And I said, I'm determined to make sure that shows, because I feel like it shows, you know, when you are lacking in certain areas. And I also have learned not to be afraid to ask for help. I've learned to say SOS when I'm tapped out. I've learned to say no when I really want to say yes, but I'm going to say no because my body's going to break down if I don't. I can't keep going, you know? So I just think that as Black women, we carry a lot of weight on our shoulders, and not because, but that's just who we were. I haven't met not one Black woman that don't, that is like, look, I got a lot going on, but we wear a lot of hats, but we have to start taking better care of her before we can be open for anybody else. So that is where that journey came from, because I wasn't taking care of me, but I was taking care of so many other things. And I had to start loving me a lot more than what I was.
That's the key to empowerment. Yeah, you just gave us a final takeaway. De-Andrea, do you have a final takeaway that you want to share with the audience?
Just kind of going back to some of the initial things that we talked about. It's so important to learn to be at home in your body, and appreciating and loving where you are. And that's the thing. It may be really hard to do that. Also, if there is, you know, an urge to make a change, if it's coming from a place of not liking your body, I'm not sure that you will ever get to the point where you like your body. And so it's important, and that's, you know, and that can go back to internalized fat phobia, right?
Yeah.
But I just really want people to get to the point where they can really feel at home in their body, so that they can appreciate where they are, who they are, and get to the point where they can experience pleasure fully in their bodies.
Wonderful. And both of you ladies have various businesses and talents. So for people in the audience who are interested in finding you, what sorts of services do you offer virtually?
Right now, all of my services are online. So I provide individual and relationship therapy virtually. And yeah, that's where I am.
And for the audience, I will have both of the ladies' websites and social media handles listed on she.confidential.com. This has been the start. This is just the beginning. This is conversation one of a lot, because there's, as you were talking, De-Andrea, I was making notes. The book that you mentioned, all of those things. There's so many places that we need to go in this conversation, because body image issues, they've always been there for us, and there's a source for that. And the understand, even when I make reference to things that my mom and different women in my family did, I understand as an adult that a lot of that came from a place of protection, because historically we haven't been able to protect Black bodies, Black women. And so we've had to make decisions, to try to camouflage our babies so that they will be safe from predators. And we still have to do that. So that's where a lot of those things come from a place of trying to shield our children, and then also that fear that Ashley alluded to. We don't want our babies to grow up. So can you please stay in this little place? I don't want to have to think about what you're doing in the bathroom. So it's so much fear. Fear and shame are such powerful emotions. And until we confront them, they'll continue to dictate how we live and our comfort with things, and it will impact our kids. So having conversations like this with ourselves first, to acknowledge what we're uncomfortable with, what we're afraid of, and then with trusted friends, and then seeking out professionals like De-Andrea is the way to start to try to heal and address some of these challenges that we're having in our community. So this is the first of many conversations, because this could go in a lot of different directions. But that's all that was our focus for today, and all we really have time for, unless we want to keep people in a conversation for hours and hours. So I thank both of you ladies for giving us this time today, and for sharing your insights. Thank you, De-Andrea. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you to the audience for tuning in to On Her Terms. I am your host, Charlene Ketchum. Until next time.